Hey, welcome back. I'm Yvonne Wakefield, and this is my YouTube channel where I read from my books, Babe in the Woods, Building a Life One Log at a Time, and then we're going to go down the line to the second in the series, Babe in the Woods Self-Portrait. And then finally, I hope we're going to all make it to Babe in the Woods Path of Totality. I want to tell you, I was at the cabin this week. I hadn't been there since November, late November when I shut it up. I could not get up there this winter because the snow was so deep. So I went up last week. The snow had just basically receded about 2 weeks ago. There were maybe some little flowers coming up here and there. It is over a mile high. So on Sunday night before I was leaving, Sunday afternoon before I was leaving, I mopped the whole place with Pine Sol bleach or Pine Sol disinfectant, which is really good for keeping away mice and stuff. And I put the mop on the porch that night. And in the morning, when I went to leave, I went to pick up the mop and it was totally frozen. I looked at the temperature gauge or the thermometer. It was 30 degrees. So that was just kind of an interesting thing because when I backed away and drove away, I just saw that little mop on the porch. That's not going to get picked up until when I go there next time, which will hopefully be warmer. So last chapter we read was 16, and there's an illustration in the back of that I did. It's here. It's reproduced in the book that I did find in my originals. And here's actually the original illustration of this. This was done in Rapidograph pen, which if those of you don't know about it, it's a technical pen that you fill cartridges with ink and you have to keep filling it, and it's nothing like what you have these days with technical pens you can buy at the store. But this was also a precursor sketch, just in pencil value. So I just wanted to show you that. So I'm going to get into chapter 17, but I need to regroup about what happened in 16. So I left that crummy old log cabin. Oh, my book fell down. Arturo says my book fell down. I have to put my book up. Babe, stay up there. Okay. So I moved out of the log cabin, and I set up my new camp below the cabin I was building, the log cabin, and lived in a pup tent. And I lived in that pup tent up until October when I moved into the cabin I finished. So chapter 17 is called Hang On to It. Jim is the expert when it comes to building with logs. Brad has experience as a framing carpenter. My expertise is limited to scrapbooks and broken fingers. Both men have long relationships with tools. I am shyly courting. Both are patient with my ineptitude in different ways. No, use the 1/8 inch, not the 1/2 inch blade, Brad explains. You mean the one that looks like a piranha teeth? I unscrew a hacksaw blade and then replace it with a fine-toothed one. Put your foot on it, Brad strongly advised me as the rebar I'm sawing rolls back and forth. Back it out, Jim suggests, when the hand drill bit lodges in a tamarack butt. His words always come off kinder than Brad, as if he's reasoning with a slightly mentally disabled child. You damn thing! Jim yells at me on one occasion, only one of many where I've proved experientially disabled. Only pound on chisels if they got metal end caps. Jim takes the chisel out of my hand. It was his, after all. The second time I misuse a tool of his, he throws me into the creek, unceremoniously plucked me from the log I was notching, slung me over his Peterbilt shoulders, and I did not flinch or miss a step as I flayed away, my fist hammering into his rock-solid bare back. Pausing Only to ensure the pool was clear of boulders, he stopped short, flipped me off his back, and over the bank into the brain freeze creek. After that, I never used a tool of his again. When it takes too long for me to saw through rebar or drill a hole into the bottom of a tamarack post, I see impatience in both my working companions' faces. If my ineptitude with any task holds up the job, they make little ribbing jokes I pretend not to see. On one occasion, Brad takes the hacksaw out of my hands, puts his foot on the rolly piece of rebar, and finishing cutting in what it's taken me hours to do. Another time, he takes the bit I got stuck, reverses the drill, and finishes boring a hole in seconds compared to the minutes, many minutes it would take me. Jim never takes a tool from me unless it's his favorite chisel, although on occasion it looks like he wants to. Both Jim and Brad are right. Compared to them, I am lacking in skills and strength. I am far the weaker sex. Even though I can hold my own debating sexual equality, I cannot keep up with the men. What would Gloria Steinem think? At this point in time, when women in cities burn their bras, march for equal rights, I work without a shirt among males who are far more stronger and more experienced with tools. I am not protesting this. Inexperience and lack of upper body strength are my greatest weakness. I realize this and the inequality between me and muscled men who easily handle tools. I fumble as I learn to get a handle on them. Fuck it, just fuck it. I want to scream like Brad did. Instead, I yell shit and throw the sledgehammer to the ground after slamming it into a piece of rebar that bent instead of driving straight down. Unlike a nail, there was no way to pry out this mistake. Fortunately, it is in a seal log and will be hidden under floorboards. Still, it's frustrating enough to make me want to throw in the dish towel, or at least the sledgehammer. Toward the end of June, all the posts are up, seals laid. The site is a parathon of golden logs erected or decked and ready to lay into walls. Joists are waiting to be set to support floorboards yet to arrive. Brad has moved out of the old cabin and made a camp by my fork at the creek, about 1/8 of a mile above my camp. Sometimes we share a dinner cooked over the others' campfires, then leave quickly to our respective camps to read and to write. Brad mostly writes letters he gives to Jim to mail. At the building site, I always feel as I'm bothering both of them. Sometimes like maybe this is Brad's cabin and not mine. Jake shows up. Remember from the back, I ordered a wood-burning stove from a guy in Bend or Redmond named Jake. So Jake shows up one afternoon with 2 stoves and unloads one below the building site. He has jury-rigged hydraulic truck lift welded into his bed. Brad and I help him fasten canvas straps around the stove and then swing it over the gunnels onto the ground. That stove doesn't have a showroom new smell about it, but every inch of cast iron is buffed a shiny black I protect under Visqueen. If you don't know what Visqueen is, it's plastic wrap. I give Jake $20 for gas, offer him more, but he says 20 will do. He drives away after conferring with me on how to find my brother's place. The Friday evening after my stove delivery, I am heating wash water over the campfire. Mark's green Datsun, dented in the front, hit a deer head on, roars up the road, then stops in a dust. A brand new white Datsun brakes just short from rear-ending him. Howdy, my brother says, getting out of his cab, a brown paper sack in hand. Hi, says my sister, slamming the door of her new truck. Shitty directions. She gives me the letter I've written to her along with a wooden hug. Mark was pulling into the parking lot of Chester's grocery store when he discovered Anne walking around, holding out my letter, asking strangers for direction. "Where's my sister?" She had missed the turnoff to my property by 7 miles. That night, we sit around the fire, toasting, being together, and things not normally held to a fire. Pieces of pickled herring, charred, and smells really, really too bad to eat. Halva melts off the roasting stick, Doritos burnt into flames, and 2 types of Keeblers. The granola, bread, and honey in my footlocker and the cheese from the creek are also consumed in varied degrees, scorched, browned, melted. Everything pairs well with whiskey. We share way into the night, happy to be reunited in a forest by a creek. This night sky is the first roof we have shared together since we're all split up and sent to live in other people's homes. We don't talk about the circumstances that got us here or the separation that binds us. 4 years earlier, the 3 of us leaned beside the drinking fountain in the high school hallway. The 3rd bell rings. Kids with bright futures and pimply faces scramble into a classroom before the 4th bell, the tardy bell rings. My brother doesn't move. I don't move. Neither does my sister. Our parents are dead, our home gone the same way. Numbed by loss and uncertainty, we just don't move when a bell says we should. Our backs to the wall, we stand beside the drinking fountain until it's time to go. Mark and Anne walk down the empty linoleum corridor to the main entrance where cars wait to take them to a different city, a different town. I stay in the hallway and double over the burbling drinking fountain, open my mouth, but cannot swallow. 2 weeks before we stood around that drinking fountain, the 3 of us sat around a Christmas tree in the living room of our legal guardians in a suburb of Minneapolis. We had lived in their house since the night our mother died 10 months earlier, and we are now 13, 14, and 15-year-old implosions. Anne, swaddled in baby fat she would never outgrow, cries a lot. Mark, the oldest, never cried. His outlet was rage, and his face bloomed dark red like the acne scarring his skin, like the stomach ulcers chewing him alive. Me, I drew pictures of what was eating me up inside. On that Christmas Eve night, the legal guardians handed each of us a gift and their season's greeting, and there was no ho, 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 merry punctualing their terse announcement. You have 3 weeks to find somewhere else to live. They also did not say, you caught us dipping into the trust of 3 orphans in our care, and we have to leave the country to avoid jail. On that Christmas Eve, there were no angels near, harking, or otherwise. When all the trappings of this holiday gathering were cleared away, the 3 of us, feeling more akin to trash wrappings than the glittery tree, took a hike. Mark had pinched an unopened bottle of Mateus from the legal guardian's locked liquor cabinet. We were not aware of this as we stood shivering in the driveway waiting for our brothers to finish vomiting the holiday meal, which sent Anne crying a danger in -degree night. Here, it'll freeze. I handed my sister a tissue. In the dark, I could not see whether her cheeks were slick as an ice skating rink or whether there was blood in my brother's ulcerated spew. We walked into the woods, up an embankment, snow past our knees. We walked without talking about a million questions with no answers regarding a future we couldn't imagine. The scrub oak knoll thinned and ended at a pearly white golf course. Moonlight rimmed 3 sets of tracks that led to the 3rd green. I'd parred that hole one summer when the course was mowed grass. when my mother was still around to pay the dues. I teed off with a 5-wood, chipped the green with a 9, and sunk the ball in a single putt. It had been my first and last par ever. Now the cup was domed with snow. We stood shivering under the number 3 applique on the triangle flag, frozen stiff as the pole it was attached to. "You got a match?" Mark jerked his head my way. "You got an opener?" I nodded at the bottle of wine that appeared unexpectedly. We passed the bottle, nursing our collective faiths. We passed the joint, the glowing ember, the only light to this occasion. We were party leftovers nobody wanted to take home. Mark snubbed the roach in the snow. He held it to the sky, to his sisters, and before swallowing it, wished us Merry Christmas. 2 weeks later, we said goodbye to each other in that school hallway before being driven to different homes in different places as distant as we were growing apart. Now we are back together again. Our twisted paths meet on this mountainside as wild and unruly as our past 4 years. In the morning, I rekindle the campfire with empty Dorito and Keebler bags. Mark, in a sleeping bag nearby, is awakened by the crackle of wrappings and branches and flames. Anne emerges from my tent. I show them the washing pool by the creek, the pit toilet. The only thing left for breakfast is Taster's Choice and soggy Triscuits, which everyone in my little family appreciates, along with a cold splash in the creek. Fully revived, the morning young, we hike down the road. Anne is still interested in the offer I'd outlined in my last letter to her. The judge told me after Brad moved out that the man who owned the crappy cabin wanted to sell it along with 80 acres. I mailed my sister about this property. The bridge the judge and I first crossed together, then snow covered every inch of it, is rickety as ever, and the creek is so flush with summer runoff that white water spits up through the pole ribbing. Once we are all safely across, we stand in calf-high green grass and wildflowers surrounding the old cabin, dilapidated as ever, cleaner though than when I first moved in. To Anne, it is her dream home. On Monday, the cabin's owner is contacted and the trust officer is called. Anne is aware of the problem I had, so both she and the trust officer are wiser and the transaction goes smoothly. The political climate is a bit more stable too, since Gerald Ford succeeded and pardoned a national nightmare that had sent the stock market plunging. Now my sister's shares of 3M, Minnesota Mining Manufacturing stock, are worth more than the same number of shares I sold less than a year before. Within weeks, she had a deed, and the 3 of us are together again, separated by mountainsides. Altogether, we own 200 acres. We are 18, 19, and 20 years old. Thanks to you for listening to Chapter 17. We hope to see you next time with Chapter 18, Testosterone and Tillamook cheese. In between then, I always say stay hydrated with your favorite beverage of choice. But we haven't seen Henry right now. I haven't seen my little dog. When Arturo comes to do the recording and they know I get on the couch, both dogs come because it's the only time they're allowed on this little couch. So this is little Henry. Remember Deaf Henry? He says, stay hydrated. Masalama.